This is Gridiron Graduates, a weekly podcast covering all things football. Episode number 22, Bowled Over. Recorded November 10th, 2015.
Hey everybody out there in the football world, what's going on? It's the Gridiron Graduates. Back at it after a couple weeks off. Sorry for the kind of no-shows the last couple of weeks. Things going on and whatnot, but we're back at it. I'm Bill Rossetti as always, and of course my partner on the other side, Ian Wharton. What is going on, my man? Been a long time.
Not too much, just like you mentioned, real life. keeping us off the show, but it's all right. We're back, and football season's going strong. We're amazingly over halfway through the season. It's kind of crazy, like entering week 10 already. It's just like it's amazing how football makes like the year go by fast. Like I just feel like you wait all off season and such for the football season, and then when it gets here, it just flies by. It's really incredible. So
I know
yeah.
we spend 7 months going through the off season and nitpicking about all the teams and figuring out what's going to happen and who we think's going to do well, and then the season starts and everything blows up and the season just flies by quickly. I mean, like I said, we're entering week 10 this week. It's crazy. So we'll kind of jump into it. And so I guess one of the things we'll talk about, we'll start with the Carolina Panthers, still undefeated through 8 games. We're sitting at 8-0. Without a doubt, obviously the biggest surprise right now, because you and I have talked. I've obviously gone back and forth before how the Panthers, we really didn't expect much out of them before the season started, even when they had Kelvin Benjamin. Then they lost KB. We thought this team was just going to be down in the dumps. Now they're cruising. They're just about, it's, early to call teams locks for the playoffs, but at 8-0, you pretty much have to put the Panthers in the playoffs. What happened? How have they been playing so good? How do they continue to surprise us and keep winning these games?
Yeah, it's as soon as Kelvin Benjamin went down, I was like, man, do we think we gotta sell this team? And it looks really foolish now. But I don't know. I still feel like that at the time was for good reason. But this looks like a completely different team. And obviously, it starts, I think, a little bit with Cam Newton. I think Newton gets a lot of credit, and I think he should. I know some people have pointed to his stats and said, well, how can you have an MVP when he has I think he has 10 touchdowns and 6 picks, something like that. But it's it's further than that. This is a guy that he is playing really well. He's not as consistent as you hope with your superstar quarterback, but he is playing very well. And I think the biggest difference is the timing of his big plays is great. I think in the past he would try to force too much, and I think that you can tell he's now into that stretch of, with the same coaching staff, with Mike Shula as offensive coordinator, some familiar pieces on offense. Even though they're not dynamic pieces, it's still a run-first team. It's still a team that is going to be who they are. They're gonna do what they want to do every week, and I respect that. Even if it's not dynamic what they do, as far as running the ball, they're not incredibly effective running the ball, but they do enough to keep you honest as a defense, and it gets you into short yardage situations, and then that's able to take some of the stress off of their playmakers and Newton as well. So I think Newton's having a really good season. Defensively, obviously, this is a great team. Josh Norman, Charles Tillman have been fantastic at cornerback. Their linebacker core, even without Luke Kuechly for stretches of time, has been really, really good. It's just a dynamic group. And their defensive tackles are great, too. Star Lutulele and Kawan Short. They're just two big playmakers, and beating a team. Even though I think the Packers were reeling a little bit, especially with Eddie Lacy still coming to his own right now, trying to get back into great shape and be healthy. Obviously, Jordy's out for the season, so that's going to affect them, and we're seeing that now. Like you're seeing this team miss Jordy Nelson right now. But that's not to take away anything from what the Panthers did. What the Panthers have accomplished, what they continue to do, is incredibly impressive. And quite frankly, I didn't think they'd reach 8 wins on the season, let alone be there already. That's hats off to them. I think I don't know if they're like a great Super Bowl threat, and I know that, and again, maybe that's just because of what I thought of them entering the season, but I think it's going to be tougher for them in the playoffs when everything's magnified. Just the amount of drops that we see from Ted Ginn and Devin Funchess. Overall, I just think that they lack playmakers, and I think in the playoffs, that's really where you need superstars. You need guys who can create with little to no room for error. And, they've got one in Newton, and Greg Olson's a great tight end, and, they've been getting production out of guys that quite frankly, are barely rosterable players, but, I think what they're on pace to accomplish, which is obviously a playoff berth, is extremely impressive as is. But Super Bowl favorite in the NFC, I'm not sure if I'm ready to buy that yet.
Yeah, I still feel like the Packers are, to me, when we get to playoff time, I think I'll still pick the Packers to go to the Super Bowl, because they should get it together by the end of the season and going into the playoffs. And Aaron Rodgers will get that team going. But, yeah, obviously, Cam Newton, MVP candidate, is one of the biggest reasons, as you mentioned, why this team is 8-0. And really not just in control of the division, but in control of the entire NFC as far as home field goals, because now they have a 2-game lead on pretty much everybody. And now they have the head-to-head over Green Bay. So it's essentially like a 3-game lead for the number 1 seed. And, with just 8 games to go, and, they still have a pretty easy schedule down the stretch. So all they have to do is just kind of stay the course, and the road to the Super Bowl runs through Charlotte. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean they're the Super Bowl favorites, but, say they get a rematch with Green Bay in the playoffs, obviously they're going to feel more comfortable playing at home versus up in frigid Green Bay. And then the Bengals, they're also at 8-0 too, which is, still a little bit surprising, but clearly one of the better teams. And Andy Dalton, we still haven't seen Bad Andy. We keep talking about, when is Bad Andy going to show up? Well, it hasn't happened yet. And now with Ben Roethlisberger injured again for Pittsburgh, Cincinnati even if he only misses like 1 or 2 games, that's still a little bit of time for Cincinnati to pad a little bit of a lead. They look like they're going to cruise now to this division title. And with Denver losing, Cincinnati obviously now has an inside track for a first-round bye.
Sorry, I was on mute there.
Okay.
Yeah, man, Cincinnati is really interesting. I love what they've built there. I do, and I've said it before, and it's kind of fun to see this offense be maximized, and defensively, Michael Johnson's been a bigger factor than maybe I thought as well when they picked him back up from Tampa Bay, and saw him in Tampa Bay last year, and it's like, oh man, this guy just looks lost. And Cincinnati's just been perfect for him. It's a perfect role, perfect surrounding players. Geno Atkins is healthy and playing well. It's a good team, man. Like I think on the opposite end of the spectrum of the Panthers, I think this is definitely a Super Bowl contender, and I think this may be the team that could knock off the Patriots, especially as the Patriots suffered an injury to Dion Lewis. Offensive line wise, they barely have anybody left in offensive line. They're playing tight ends at the offensive line. I mean, it's that's pretty crazy. But I think Cincinnati might be that team this year that we see, a little bit of parity in the NFL as far as Super Bowl winners, and maybe they're looking at their first Super Bowl bid this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're definitely, you can't really call them a dark horse anymore in the AFC at 8-0, but yeah, if there's a team that can knock off the Patriots in the playoffs, it very well could be the Bengals. And let's go back to the Broncos a little bit, and I didn't get a chance to see much of that game, so I don't know how much you saw, but of what you did see, what happened that Indianapolis was basically able to stun the Broncos?
I saw a good amount of the game. I didn't catch the first part of it. Basically saw like the second half of it. And Broncos, we know the defense is so good. They've been playing lights out this year. I mean, it's been almost a historic level defense. But the Colts to come out and to make that win, like, it's just so weird with the Colts this year. Like, I feel like it makes you wonder. It makes you say, okay, so was the last few years more a fool's gold, or is this really them, or who exactly is this team? Like, I just feel like they're really confusing as a team.
It has been weird, yeah.
And part of it's luck. Luck is obviously injured. He's going to be missing, I think, 2 to 6 weeks. I think I saw as the time frame today, and it's clear you can see why he's been hurt. I looked at the numbers earlier. Guy has gotten hit 299 times in the last 4 years. Of like the 7 players that I was looking it up, that's between hits and sacks as a passer, not even as a runner.
Mm-hmm.
Of like the 7 quarterbacks that are similar in terms of like talent and kind of status in the league, he was by far number 1. And I didn't have time to really look up a bunch of guys, but I was just kind of searching through there. And part of it's his style of play. He's a guy who likes to extend plays. He likes to make something happen. So, inevitably, you're going to have, more hits than others because of that ability to extend. But he's got to take care of his body. He's got to take care of himself a little bit more. And that's kind of something that we talked about we didn't talk about, but was talked about with Michael Vick.
Mm-hmm.
When he was in his heydays. Like, sometimes you just have to know, just throw the ball away. Or just go down, and it's hard because Big Ben, Ben Roethlisberger, he's the same type of playmaker. I'm not going to sit there and kill the guy for it. He's an exciting player. He's a huge playmaker. He's a tremendous asset because of that ability, and it's rare. You just don't see guys being able to do that too often. So I'm not going to sit there and kill him for it. But when you look at injuries, that kind of explains things. It's, just too many hits. It's too many exposures. And I think that if you're looking at moving forward with him, you want to get him 100% this year because you can still win the division, but, the long-term health of Luck is going to be much more of a priority. I mean,
right.
We know Chuck Pagano's probably going to be gone after this season. So it's like, I just wouldn't like really stress getting Luck back. Even this season, I'll even say that much. Like, I'd be fine with them sitting him the rest of the year. Again, you're only looking at 7-8 more games. If 2 to 6 weeks is the time frame, take it closer to 6. And unless Hasselbeck can keep you in the playoff race, maybe it's the best decision to just sit Luck, recuperate, get a new system in there next year, help rebuild that offensive line a little bit, build up that defense, and maybe that's the best way to go. And part of it too is just like, even when Luck's been in there, it's not like this has looked like a good team. So, what's your upside play? I just don't see the big upside of playing Luck.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point. Like, for with most teams, if they lose their quarterback, it pretty much sinks their season. Like, we're seeing that with Dallas. 2-0 after they beat the Eagles, but that was the game that Romo's hurt. Now they haven't won since, and now they're starting to fade away a little bit in the division. The AFC South obviously is very different. Colts are only sitting at 4-5, but that's still good enough right now to lead the division by half a game over the Texans. So, it's like you said, it's still a winnable division because none of the other teams are all that great. Now, granted, Tennessee got the win at New Orleans in Mike Mularkey's first game, but is that sustainable for the rest of the season? Are they really going to keep that intensity up to keep pace in the division? Probably not. Jacksonville's going to be fading soon. It's probably just going to come down to Houston and Indianapolis. So as long as Hasselbeck can kind of keep the course, Indy should be fine and win this division. Can they make a playoff run though? I don't know. Even as getting a home game, you're looking at hosting a pretty decent team in the wild card round, possibly the Jets, possibly the Steelers, maybe the Raiders. So you're probably not looking at a Super Bowl run for the Colts this year. And for Luck himself, he probably knows, and he's probably thinking in the back of his mind too that he's about to get paid. He could very well be the highest paid quarterback ever. So if he rushes this back and risks getting hurt again and gets kind of limited from that, that's going to hurt him in terms of his contract value. So a few factors that come into this, and like you said, Pagano could be gone. It'd be quite interesting if Sean Payton ends up in Indianapolis next season.
I actually think Miami might be the more likely destination.
And I found this funny too. Like I'm glad you brought that up because it was funny how we talked here on this show. You mentioned the possibility of Sean Payton going to Miami, and then it was like I think that next weekend, that next Sunday, that Schefter comes out with a report. Something about like maybe Peyton might leave New Orleans and maybe Miami's a destination, and it's like, well, we talked about this just a couple days ago, so that's really cool.
Yeah, and part of the reason is Miami still has very deep Bill Parcells ties, and obviously Peyton's a Parcells guy, and Dan Campbell, their current interim head coach, is a Bill Parcells guy. And I mean, there's a lot of ties there to Parcells. He's still a very prominent figure in that building, even though he hasn't been there in a few years. There's still a lot of holdovers from that regime, and it's still someone that Stephen Ross trusts. And, so you never know. And obviously it really comes down to quarterback. I think if you're Sean Payton, you're going to say, well, if I'm going to leave New Orleans, I need to have a quarterback. So you're going to say, yeah, you're probably picking Andrew Luck over Ryan Tannehill. But are you picking Jim Irsay over Stephen Ross? No, I don't know. I don't know if that's a decision I make, especially when he also has a relationship with Mike Tannenbaum as well, the Dolphins' vice president of football operations. So, it's just gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting. I think that'd be a huge hire for Miami. Yeah. I think it would tremendously help Ryan Tannehill, and I think it would definitely help the franchise who desperately want one of those big kahunas as a head coach, and Stephen Ross continues to try to get. Obviously, as a Dolphins fan, I obviously hope it happens. I mean, I love Sean Payton. I wouldn't give him complete personnel control. I would have some concerns there. But whether you're the Colts or the Dolphins, I think he'd be a great, great hire and a tremendous loss for New Orleans. I mean, it'd almost be a shame that they would lose him, but sometimes that's the business if you have a bad owner.
Yeah, and obviously, things are coming to an end in New Orleans. We're clearly seeing the decline of Drew Brees. Though it does make it, pretty pleasantly surprising that they were able to go from 1-4 at one point in the season, back up to 4-4. I think now they're 4-5. Yeah, because they just lost, so it'd be 4-5 now. But yeah, I would certainly love to see Peyton in Miami as well. Just for the fact that he would get to work with Ryan Tannehill, and I'm a fan of Tannehill. I'd like to see him, continue to improve and succeed. and he certainly would help Lamar Miller a lot too. Because I keep talking about how Lamar Miller didn't get enough touches earlier this season. Well, it's nice to finally see him get going again, and Peyton would certainly get him going as well. So I think if Peyton were to land in Miami, and you would know this better than I would, obviously, like you mentioned, that fan base I'm sure would be very excited after how disappointed they are this year. So maybe that could finally be the time that they get over the hump and finally get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I really hope it happens because Miami has a very young offensive nucleus. They have basically everyone starting outside of Brandon Albert is under 30 years old, and most of them are between 24 and 27. So you're looking at a long-term position. I mean, the offense is basically set. A lot of it's exciting personnel. Kenny Stills may not be able to stay on board with Peyton, seeing as Peyton just traded him. But I mean, stuff like that you can kind of figure out. Defensively, Miami needs a lot of work. They need to really rebuild that defense. But as far as Lamar Miller, Brian Tannehill, Jay Ajayi. By the way, Jay Ajayi had a really good debut last week. Had just a handful of carries, but he looked explosive and powerful. So that's very exciting. So yeah, I mean it's we'll see. I mean I think it's gonna be a rough end of the season for Miami. I just don't think defensively they have enough to win enough games. But hey, you know what? A top 10 pick is actually going to be, I think, pretty welcome. Team desperately needs to add talent to the pool.
And I didn't get a chance much to see the Dolphins, the last couple of weeks under Dan Campbell, but compared to how they were playing under Joe Philbin these first couple of weeks, compared to how they are now under Dan Campbell, what kind of differences would you say there have been in the defensive play, in those two time frames this season?
It's hard because they lost Cameron Wake.
That's
to an Achilles
too, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, before that happened, they looked like a totally different defense because he came back healthy off the bye week, and that changed the defense. Then they started to look great. Dominican Sue's been fantastic this year, but it's really hard when only one player is playing well, especially along the front four.
Right.
And that's kind of what Miami's stuck with right now. It's Sue's being double teamed, and he's still playing well, but it's hard when no one else is in the area to clean up after him.
Mm-hmm.
And Wake's injury really just changes everything. I mean, it's going to be a rough end of the season. They just can't create enough pass rush now. Olivier Vernon's been terrible in a contract season. I don't even know who would want to pay him at this point. I just don't,
because he was a bit of a rising star before this season.
Yeah. I mean, he was definitely playing off of Cam Wake, and it's pretty clear he was just living off of Cam Wake and his production,
right,
disruption, and just kind of forcing players into Vernon. Well, hey, that is how it is. Sometimes guys don't develop, and he hasn't been a guy that's developed. So, but I hopefully Wake comes back healthy next year. That's what I really hope for. Because I'd be worried about it if not. He's one of my favorite players of all time. So obviously to see him get hurt, especially on a non-contact play, is really tough. But
and it always feels like he's still always one of the most underrated players in the NFL, no matter how good he plays. Maybe that's just how I see, or maybe I haven't.
No, I'd agree. Miami hasn't won, so I think that's part of it. It's hard to recognize good players on bad teams. He's also been really underpaid. Miami's only been paying him like $8 or $9 million throughout his career. Like, compare that to like Justin Houston, who's going to get like $20 million a year.
Yeah.
I mean, like Cameron Wake was as good as Justin Houston is, for the better part of the last decade. So it's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. Miami. He's been a fun player to watch. I hope that his career isn't over. I hope to see him at least one more year.
Mm-hmm. And also one of the nice reasons, as we get a little Final Jeopardy think music, I like that. One of the reasons too, it was nice that I got back on the podcast this week, is because our teams are facing each other this week. Miami travels to Philadelphia The Eagles, of course, coming off the big win in overtime over Dallas to keep pace with the Giants. Really a much needed win for the Eagles. Really nice to see the offense, improve a little bit. DeMarco Murray played very well in his return to Dallas. But it's also very clear, even though they put up 27 points, it's still pretty clear that Dallas misses Tony Romo. We're still a couple weeks away from seeing Tony Romo. But yeah, Miami at Philadelphia this week should be interesting for the two of us.
Well, if you mean by interesting, it'll be filled with jealousy. I love watching Chip Kelly's offense, and even though it hasn't been beautiful this year, I still enjoy it. I enjoy the schemes. I hate that people say that Bill Lazor's offense is built off Chip Kelly's offense, because it's not. It's not that similar. So I enjoy Chip Kelly a lot, and I think that this Eagles team, man, they have a chance. They have a chance right now.
They do.
And it's been a rough year for them, but it's been a rough year for the whole division.
Yeah.
And they're right in it. They have a chance as the Giants face a brutal second half of the schedule. This starts right here.
They still have two undefeated teams left on their schedule.
Yep. So the time is now for Philadelphia. I think they're going to beat Miami. I think they're just going to be able to run all over them. And defensively, they're going to cause a lot of issues. With that front seven, it's too good. Although it's really unfortunate that Jordan Hicks got hurt. He was playing really well.
That was, man.
That's a rough.
I hated to see that.
Yeah.
When I caught wind of that news, I was so disappointed. I was like, "Oh, are you serious?" Like, because this guy was playing so good, Even. It's just fresh. It was just tough, real tough to see. But at least Kiko Alonso is starting to come back, so it's not like they don't have a replacement for Hicks. But still a tough loss, even despite the fact that he's a rookie.
Yeah, really a surprising one too. Like, I liked him out of Texas, but I never thought he would have done that as well as he did. I mean,
yeah,
that's one of those just
Chip
draft
Kelly can
deals.
find good players outside of the Pac-12. Go figure. I guess we can kill that Pac-12 narrative.
Yeah, it's true. I think Chip's done a nice job. I mean, it's all of his moves haven't been perfect, but a lot of them have been at least no worse than what he got rid of. I mean, LaShawn McCoy continues to be hurt. Nick Foles has been terrible. And, I mean, finally, the Rams beat writers are starting to realize that he's the problem. So
yeah, I think it's safe to say that offense pretty much runs through Todd Gurley, and without him, the Rams really aren't even in playoff contention right now.
I read an interesting stat too, and obviously I'm not like Mr. Stat guy, but I do think stats are interesting.
Yeah,
and especially like when the film definitely makes sense with it. Mm-hmm. So Foles was on pace for like 2,990 yards, and like 57% of those yards have come after the catch. Like, that's insane. That's so bad.
Yeah.
Like, that shouldn't be possible. And like, that's such a Jeff Fisher stat for his quarterback. So, like, if Eagles fans, I mean, I know Sam Bradford hasn't been the guy yet, but he sure hasn't been Nick Foles, man. He's been no worse than Nick Foles, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I know people get frustrated with Sam Bradford, I guess because of the trade or whatever, but yeah, it could have been a lot worse. They still could have had Nick Foles as their quarterback, and who knows? With Foles at quarterback, they may not even be 4-4. Maybe with Foles, maybe they don't beat Dallas on Sunday night. Maybe they, trying to think who else they beat. Maybe they don't beat they might still beat the Giants because the defense just dominated that game. But still, they probably would be sitting under 500, but at least now they're at 500 at 4-4. We see that Bradford, at least, in the second half of games, picks it up a little bit. And really, that's the key to this Eagles team. It's not about, beating them down early. it's wearing them out as the game goes on, so that when you get into the second half and into the fourth quarter, that's when they try to, put the nail in the coffin. And, you see that in some of these games and how they win some of these games. So if they can continue to do that, and like we mentioned with the Giants' difficult schedule coming up, the fact that they play the Patriots this week, and then they still have to play the Panthers down the road. They also play a good Vikings team late in the season, and of course Week 17 against the Eagles. So, you have to think Philly could be the favorite right now in the East, even though the Giants are leading at the midway point. Philly could possibly be seen as the favorite to win that division.
Yeah, I mean that's probably who I would put my money on. I wouldn't be shocked if the Cowboys can somehow dig their way out. I mean, I don't know. It's so Tony. It would be such a Tony Romo career plot line. I feel like.
Yep.
If somehow
absolutely destroy all the previous narratives on Romo.
Right, and a lot of those
out of 2-6.
Yeah, and a lot of those Romo narratives are bad anyways. I mean,
yeah.
Mostly everything points to him being just a great quarterback that people should really respect. I don't understand the hate for him. But this is a team they've been in games with bad quarterback play.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it just kind of makes sense that if you say, well, if you add a good quarterback in there instead of a terrible one, this team could win. And NFL doesn't work like that. Football doesn't work like that. It's weird. It just doesn't. It has a way of results not always matching what common sense would say. So we'll see if it works out like that. But I'm not ready to say that the Cowboys won't end up 8-8 or maybe 9-7 and somehow win that division. I just wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, and at this point, it looks like it's only going to take about 9, maybe 10 wins to win the NFC East. I look at the rest of the Eagles' schedule. 10-6 might be their ceiling. They probably lose to New England, so that's 5 losses. They probably lose to Arizona, that's 6. So maybe they get to 10 wins, because there's plenty of winnable games left for the Eagles as well. Their next 2 games should be winnable for the Eagles. Miami at home next week, and then they got Tampa Bay. So, take care of business there. That puts them at 6-4. And then I believe Detroit. Yeah, then it's a Thanksgiving game against Detroit. If they lose that game, that's embarrassing because the Lions are so bad right now. So, obviously this is, assuming a lot of things and maybe a bit of a positive outlook, but there's certainly a chance they can get to 7-4 and then, probably lose to New England, maybe beat Buffalo. So I think the 2 definite losses remaining on their schedule are Philly or New England and Arizona. And if that's the case, then that would mean Dallas has to win out to win the division. But I believe that would give them the tiebreaker because I think they might have, unless they'd be tied in division record. I'm not. I'm trying to think of this offhand.
Yeah, it's really gets weird.
Because they split with Philly, they split with New York. Winning out means they will have swept Washington, so that would put them at 4 in the division. Eagles in this scenario would be also 4-2. So crazier things have happened, though.
Yep.
Castle could lead them to a win over Tampa Bay this week, which I think they do. Gets them back to 3-6. Then Romo's eligible to return against Miami in Week 11.
Yeah, and from what he's been saying is that he will be back. That's been what at least Romo's been saying is that he'll be back the first week he can be back. So, Of course.
Yeah, player speak.
Yeah.
But I think I did see somewhere someone was saying, Dallas actually made a mistake putting Romo on IR, eligible to return. The fact that maybe he could have came back earlier than what the short-term IR would have allowed him to come back. But, that's the risk you take, and, obviously you can only do that with one player, and if you have a player like Tony Romo who gets injured versus, another player who gets injured and you have to make a decision on who to put on short-term IR, obviously you're going to put Romo, if you know that he can come back and you're not sure about the other player, at least you get your quarterback back. So it should be quite interesting though as the season winds down. But I want to shift a little bit now to the college game because, of course, today being Tuesday, which is rare for us, for those who have listened, we're recording on a Tuesday, but the college football playoffs ranks were released today, the second set of them, and Clemson remained at number 1. Alabama is now up to number 2 after their big win over LSU. Ohio State holds at number 3, and Notre Dame is now in at number 4 with Iowa, Baylor, Stanford, and Oklahoma State as the first 4 out. And of course, with it almost being college basketball season, I have to throw the first 4 out term in there. And then LSU and Utah round out the top 10. So what was your take on this new set of rankings?
I don't disagree with them too much. I'm still trying to figure out how Ohio State dropped. I mean, that's a team that's winning. I think that people should have learned from last year that margin of victory against bad teams shouldn't really matter. Winning does. I don't know. I said this for Florida State last year too, that the defending champs should get a little slack. I made the same argument last year, and here's why. Every team is playing you harder than they'll play any other game the rest of the season. There's a reason why almost after every game, Ohio State's opponent actually got worse the next week. We didn't see the same level of execution from teams like Northern Illinois, Indiana, got their butt kicked the week after. Teams look mentally exhausted after playing Ohio State, and they get their butt kicked in the fourth quarter too. Is Ohio State winning 49-0 like TCU can do, or TCU puts even more points? But guess what? They're not getting the same challenge. They're not getting the same level of competition. It is what it is. It's the heightened expectations, I think, kind of made things difficult for Ohio State. And, there's rightfully so. There should be that level of expectation. That team is super talented. Should they be scoring more? Yeah, probably. But they started to look like that team that we thought that they would be when JT Barrett was starting. And so, well, guess what? The moment JT Barrett gets an OVI, which is a really dumb move on his part, then Cardale Jones comes back in, and the offense struggled. And it's not that Cardale's a bad quarterback. He just doesn't have a lot of experience, and he doesn't really fit the offense too well right now because it's just a very young offense outside of Ezekiel Elliott. So, I think this team is going to be fine. I think Ohio State's a great team. I think that they could still beat any team in the country, and I feel very strongly enough that I really don't think I'd like their chances against all these teams. Clemson's really good, though. I think Clemson's a solid team. I'm not sure if Notre Dame belongs so high, even being like one of the first out. I just don't know about. I don't know. I feel like them and Clemson. I mean, those are like the only two teams that each of those have each other have kind of faced is each other. So it's like, I don't know. It's kind of a weird.
And that's probably what they're basing Notre Dame on is the fact that one loss is a very close loss to the team that's now ranked number 1.
Yeah, and we see that a lot with the SEC. The SEC's like that. They benefit from a lot of that. But I mean, I can't sit here and say that they got the top 4 wrong. Now, would I like the order changed a little bit? Sure, but that doesn't matter really. I think they've got the top 4 right as is from what we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, there's still a few weeks left. This is still obviously
things will change.
you look at a team like Iowa at 5. Obviously, this tells you that if Iowa does run the table and wins the Big Ten, they're in the playoff. No questions asked.
Yeah.
Baylor, if they run the table, they possibly get in. Poor Big 12. It still feels like they're being stuck to. Big 12 still has 2 undefeated teams left. Neither of them are in the top 5. Oklahoma State is sitting behind 3 one-loss teams. They're not even like Stanford's the highest one-loss team outside the top 4, and they're still ahead of Oklahoma State, even after Oklahoma State's impressive win over TCU. So it's a little interesting how they order some of these teams. Now, obviously, we're not going to know, each individual vote. We only see the composite rankings of the 13 members. I'm trying to think offhand. I don't have their schedule in front of me. Who like some of Stanford's top wins are compared to a team like Oklahoma State, who obviously now their top win is TCU, who's 15th in the playoff poll. Baylor, of course, is going to have people are going to have the argument that they probably didn't play anybody. And just to go back to Ohio State, it seems like they're basically being looked at through the eye test. Jeff Long pretty much said that they look forward to evaluating them with JT Barrett. So it's almost like they're still being given the benefit of the doubt a little bit and seeing, how they go as the season goes on. It's a shame, though, that the Ohio State-Michigan State game coming up lost a little bit of luster because of a blown call by that official. I mean, at least in my opinion, it was clear that, the guy's about 2 yards out of bounds and came back in and caught the ball. But, hey, at least Michigan State now can play spoiler. Obviously, their playoff hopes are probably dashed because, the fact is they now have a loss to Nebraska stinking up their resume. But, they could certainly knock Ohio State out of there and put Iowa in. And then one of the races I like following too is the Group of 5 race, and Navy now is in the top spot as far as the Group of 5 spot goes after Memphis's loss to as I'm drawing a blank who they just lost to. But in any event, you have four teams from the Group of 5 pretty much grouped within 5 spots of each other, with Navy, Memphis, Temple, and Houston. Interesting, all from the American Athletic. So a nice bounce back season for the AAC, that they have so many teams now in the top 25 and competing for one of those New Year's Six bowls.
Yeah, and a lot of quarterbacks playing well too. Obviously, Keenan Reynolds, he's about to break the all-time touchdown record for individuals. And then you've got Paxton Lynch, who's definitely a first-round quarterback prospect at this time of the year. And then you've got Greg Ward, who under Tom Herman, has done really well in the first year at Houston. So it's a lot of fun to watch that whole conference play. And really oddly enough, too, is UCF, a powerhouse in that conference for, last several years.
Mm-hmm.
They're legitimately probably the worst team in college football. 0-10. They're 1-8 against the spread.
Wow.
They are a terrible football team.
And this was a team that just a couple years ago played in the Fiesta Bowl against Baylor. So, wow.
It's hard to imagine.
What a turnaround.
Yep.
So let's try and project a little bit. Obviously, our picks might be way off, but let's kind of play around here and see what we think is going to happen, and maybe play around with the balls. Now I don't know how familiar you are with the. I'm sure you are pretty familiar with the bowl selection process, at least with the New Year's Six.
Sorry for the bowl games, for the BCS bowl games, or well.
Oh, like after you set up the playoff games, and then the four New Year's Six games afterwards. So like we'll start with the four playoff. So like we'll take this week's rankings and we'll say, so it's almost like a sneak peek of my bowl projections if I go ahead and do a full projection. But we'll do the New Year's. So obviously right now Clemson Notre Dame would be the first semifinal, and Clemson would probably be sent to the as I remind myself, it's the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl are the two semis. So Clemson would be sent to the Orange Bowl. They're going to keep Clemson close in Florida versus sending them to Texas. So you'll have Clemson Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl, and you would have Alabama Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. So I guess we would also project too that those three would be the conference champs, right? Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State.
Yeah, because if Ohio State loses to Michigan or Michigan State, that's definitely going to change.
Mm-hmm.
Even like if they lose one of those, they're not going to make it. I don't think.
Right.
So.
Yeah, if they lose to Michigan State, you're probably looking at Sparty now in the Big Ten title game. But at least with the ranks we have now, those would probably be your conference champs. And then I guess we would project Baylor right now as Big 12 champ only because they're higher than Oklahoma State. And we'll put, I guess, Stanford's leading the Pac-12. And then Navy's the group of 5. So what we would do then is slot the kind of auto bids, quote unquote, for the other 4 bowl games. So Rose Bowl, obviously we plot Stanford in there as Pac-12 champs, and then we would take the next Big Ten team, which I guess we'll say Iowa right now.
Yeah, I believe Iowa would be it.
Yeah, so you would have Iowa versus Stanford in the Rose Bowl.
Wow, that'd be interesting.
Sugar Bowl, we'll plot Baylor in there as the Big 12 champ. And then SEC, probably they'd go with LSU, I think, over Florida at this point. Would you agree?
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially with the incident with Will Greer for Florida. It makes it interesting. The SEC's been really kind of fun because especially with like Ole Miss kind of falling off too.
Yeah.
It's been kind of makes it fun to consider.
So that would make a nice Baylor LSU matchup in the Sugar Bowl. So that takes care of all the Power 5 conference champs. So Peach and Fiesta would pretty much be, we have to throw Navy in there as the group of 5, and then I guess the remaining 3 spots would go to we still have to do, we have Pac-12. Yeah, because we have the 3 Power 5. Yeah, so I guess it would just be the next teams up. So we would have Oklahoma State, we would have Utah, and we would have Florida joining Navy. So if you had to put those 4 into 2 matchups for the Peach and the Fiesta Bowl, Oklahoma State, Utah, Florida, and Navy, how would you pair them up?
Oh, man. So I don't really like the Navy fit for anybody because with a month to prepare for them, I feel like teams are going to do all right. It's really interesting because, like, I remember Urban Meyer talking about Navy, like over the off season because they kind of prep for like the first 3 games over the summer. But then once they get into the season, obviously you only have a couple days to get ready for the next opponent.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, I think it was like I guess like a year or two ago when he was talking about this. He was like, yeah, like Navy basically you have to prepare for all summer because it's the only team that you'll face that plays the triple option like they do, and they're so good at executing at that level. They just have a ridiculously good advantage on a week to week basis. So like I think with a month to play them, I feel like I would take everyone against them of this group, especially if it was like Stanford. I really wouldn't like that matchup because Christian McCaffrey is a really, really fun player to watch if you haven't seen him play. They have a couple of former NFL studs, stud sons. It's kind of weird as that kind of.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that family tree going.
Yeah, Barry Sanders Jr. and more so McCaffrey. McCaffrey's really good.
But just in terms of like matching up the teams, not necessarily even worrying about, who would beat who, like just in terms of pairing the teams together.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, man, because like Baylor, I feel like if you're looking at Baylor, the best matchup for them would probably be in terms of enjoyment.
Well, we have Baylor already set.
Yeah. Sorry, who are the other two teams again?
We have Oklahoma State, we have Utah, we have Florida, and we have Navy.
Okay, so then you'd probably want to see Florida and Oklahoma State, and then I think you're stuck with kind of Stanford and Navy. More so, I'd like to see Florida. Yeah, like it's always fun to see like those Big 12 teams against the SEC teams.
Yeah.
Just because they're just so different as far as style and even just like level of athleticism sometimes makes it fun. But
kind of all those classic offense versus defense matchups. Yeah. So
yeah, maybe
the Sugar Bowl at least in that sense for always pairing those two.
Yeah, and maybe Navy versus Florida would be fun. Although I just worry that game would kind of get out of control just because one team is so much bigger than the other.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the question now, too, becomes, will Navy actually get that group of 5 spot, or do you think one of the other AAC teams eventually surpasses them?
I hope Houston does, and that's my partial. that's with my bias.
That's okay.
Obviously, graduating from University of Houston. I hope that they do.
So at least in general, you're happy to see them doing as well as they are. 24th in the playoff ranks and certainly in the mix.
Yeah, of course. They had to do this after I left. But I just like to watch them. I just think that they're a little bit more fun to watch, and I think that they could hang with teams a little bit better. As far as head-to-head matchups. So I hope Houston gets it, but I am rooting for Navy. I like rooting for the underdog.
Yeah, it would certainly be quite interesting to see a school like Navy get into one of those big bowls if they can get there. So, but we'll see. I'm not sure. Let me bring up Navy's schedule quick. Who they have left. Well, their next game's against SMU, so that should be an easy win for them. At Tulsa, at Houston, November 27th. So that's probably their toughest game remaining, is at Houston, November 27th. And then, of course, the Army-Navy game on December 12th. So, it's possible, actually, looking at the remaining schedule, that Navy could, if they get past the Houston game, they very well could snag one of those New Year's Six bowl games. And as far as the playoffs go, I think obviously Clemson, if they win out, they're definitely in, and they certainly have a good chance to do that. Alabama, they're always going to be contention. Ohio State, that 4th spot though is going to be interesting. Can the Big 12 team get into that spot? Can Iowa overtake Ohio State? If it ends up being those two in the Big Ten title game, both undefeated, So it's certainly going to play itself out. I know there's people that are kind of upset that there's they were upset when there was one loss team in the top four last week. This week you have two. And then obviously not all the undefeateds are, at the top, with Oklahoma State sitting at number 8, and of course, Houston all the way down at 24. So, I don't know. I guess right now, Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State I probably could see as a 3. I could see Baylor getting into that 4th spot. I could see Stanford getting into that 4th spot. What about you?
I think Stanford might be my pick. If I'm going to pick one that can get in there, they're playing just really good football right now, and it's kind of funny because you looked at them early in the season. I was like, man, it just doesn't look like a good team. Kevin Hogan, obviously, have questions about him, but this looks like a team that's really playing together. They look like both sides of the ball. They're very physical, obviously, and Christian McCaffrey, man, I keep telling, man. Like it's going to be insane how much running back talent's going to enter the NFL the next couple of years. The guys like McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, the kid Elijah Wood. Yeah, Leonard Fournette, Nick Chubb. I mean, my goodness, like there are so many good young running backs in the country, and it's going to be just phenomenal to watch these guys go enter the NFL. And I think it's going to usher in a new era here soon. I think we're going to see a lot more running the ball in the NFL as teams kind of figure out, hey, these young quarterbacks need more help. Well, big shocker. I mean, there's a reason why most of the all the top quarterbacks in the NFL are all in their 30s, and most of them in their mid to late 30s. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason why. It takes a long time to be a great player. And especially at quarterback, more than ever, since they're more protected than ever before. I mean, you're seeing guys extend their careers and play great football deep into their career. So, I'm really impressed with guys like McCaffrey, and I think he's going to be a big reason why Stanford's going to find themselves in that bottom 4. I think they beat Notre Dame, and that helps catapult them into the top 4. And then obviously, I think Ohio State beats Iowa. As well. So I mean, it's one of those things where these teams play each other, so it's gonna obviously knock each other down. But you can easily see a big jump from a team like Stanford up into the top 4 with a win against Notre Dame.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. A lot of this is going to play itself out. Like you mentioned, Notre Dame plays Stanford. Baylor still has to play Oklahoma State. Ohio State likely is going to play Iowa if they get past Michigan State and Michigan. So, for all the complaining right now, after just the second set of rankings, this is going to play itself out. It probably feels like in the end, unless there's like a big upset, these teams are going to kind of knock each other out and things are going to settle by the time we get to December. And Selection Sunday. Hey, another basketball term. Yeah, it's gonna be very fun to watch, for sure. As I bring up quickly the schedule for this week, see if there's any interesting games of note this week. And that was one of the things too that was talked about last week, was the fact that there's so many ranked teams playing each other in the next few weeks that people like to use the word chaos, but it basically means it's just gonna settle itself out. So like looking at the schedule this week, so you got Florida at South Carolina, for example, Ohio State at Illinois, Notre Dame hosts Wake Forest, Clemson is at Syracuse, Alabama at Mississippi State, though, could be an interesting game.
Yeah, I'm interested to see that. I've heard a lot of good stuff about Dak Prescott. this year, and I haven't watched them once. I'm kind of behind on college football, unfortunately, but yeah, that should be a fun game. I mean, if you like physical football, if you like, trench football, which obviously I like a lot. I'm a big fan of that. So I think you're right. I think that's a good under the radar game.
Memphis takes on Houston this week. Unfortunately, could have another game that lost a little bit of luster after one of the teams lost, but still a good game. And you talked about Houston earlier. This could be one of those games that could vault Houston into the driver's seat for the Group of 5 spot.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
I won't root against Navy because my best friend's in the Navy and my brother-in-law is in the Navy. So I'm not gonna root against them, but I am rooting for UH, of course. And my guy Greg Ward. Greg Ward is just so fun. And William Jackson at cornerback, really good prospect, by the way.
Then just kind of glancing other games without Oklahoma against Baylor.
That should be a good one. By the way, I think Oklahoma wins that one. And that would, I think that might put them in the driver's seat for winning the Big 12 too.
It could, because I believe the Sooners host Bedlam this year.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Oklahoma could play a little bit of spoiler in the Big 12, get themselves
probably Sam J. Perrine and Joe Mixon, and those guys are going to be really tough for Baylor to stop. That's a terrible defense.
There you go. So if maybe Oklahoma can play its way into the Sugar Bowl and basically prevent the Big 12 again from being a part of the playoff. And then once again, hands will be up in the air. Oh, we need to expand to 8 playoff teams.
Well, maybe your team should play somebody.
Guess what? All these conference commissioners signed off on this playoff knowing full well, at least, hopefully their math skills kicked in at the time, that with only 4 playoff teams and 5 power conferences, 1 power conference would be left out each year. It just so happens that it could be the Big 12 for the second year in a row. With that, I think we will switch back to the NFL talk quick about the some of the games in Week 10. Again, hard to believe it's Week 10 already. Hey, at least buys are coming to an end soon. We only got 2 more weeks of buys, and then we're back to all 32 teams playing each week. So just to kind of run through Buffalo at New York Jets Thursday night. I didn't get it. I haven't gone and checked the jerseys yet because apparently there was talk about these teams will be wearing some interesting quote-unquote jerseys on Thursday night.
Yeah, the color rush. Yeah, like the Bills ones are really. I like the Bills ones. They're like the red with I believe white color numbers, and then the Jets. The Jets is pretty similar. I think they're just wearing like a slightly lighter green, and it's their pants are going to be green as well. So I like it though. I think it's kind of fun. I'm all for like the color jersey. I'm not a huge white jersey fan. I like your native colors of whatever the deep color would be.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that. I think those are a lot more fun than plain white for most teams. There's a few teams that have, I don't know, for some reason the helmets go really well with their jersey, but I'm fashion football too. I enjoy a nice jersey.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking at the Bills jersey now. I like it. I like the full red jersey.
Yeah, it's a little intense.
It is.
But I like it.
The Jets going with a nice green color. So it kind of feels Christmassy, but hey,
Yeah, right?
it's pretty interesting. Detroit at Green Bay, Dallas at Tampa. We kind of talked that Castle could lead Dallas to win over Tampa, and then maybe the rise of the Cowboys. Carolina, Tennessee, Chicago, St. Louis, and not a whole lot of good games again this week, but I guess with a lot of down teams, we'll probably expect that. New Orleans at Washington, Miami at Philly, Cleveland at Pittsburgh, Jacksonville at Baltimore, Minnesota at Oakland. No, that's a good one.
That's a big one. Yep, that's a big one, and so is the Sunday night game.
Arizona at Seattle.
Yep. I'm really interested to see those two games, especially Teddy Bridgewater and the Vikings, who I just published an article on last night. The Vikings are Super Bowl contender.
Hey.
Yeah, a little bit of a hot take. A little bit too. That was what was a sign.
But hey, they're tied for the division lead right now, so it's not like they're guaranteed that they'd have to go on the road to get to the Super Bowl. There's certainly a chance that they could start at home.
Yeah, and I mean, part of it too is I think the best is yet to come for this team. I don't know what's going to happen. Their schedule in the second half does get more difficult, but I like their talent a lot. I really like their defense. I love their coaching. I like Teddy Bridgewater a lot. I don't know why Twitter has kind of turned on him. He's a really good player, guys. He's literally working with probably a bottom 3 offensive supporting cast around him, besides Adrian Peterson.
Oh, but remember, pro days make all the difference.
Yeah, apparently. And people love to go by his stats, and they say, oh, it's only 6 touchdowns. Well, yeah, he's had a couple of them dropped, and he's been able to get them right inside the 3-yard line a couple times. And then, of course, once you're inside the 3-yard line, you're going to hand that ball off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about it, people. When you have the best running back in the league at the goal line.
Yeah, and by the way, Adrian Peterson's on pace for his 3rd most rushing yards in his career this year. At 30 years old, coming off a year where he played like 40 snaps, and then he sat out.
Wow.
Man's on pace for 1,500 yards. It's insane.
It's amazing. Yeah, some of the stats we see are just ridiculous. I mean, look at the game Antonio Brown had last week. Almost 300 yards receiving. Wow.
And amazingly, no touchdowns.
That was the most
weird.
Amazing part. 17 catches, not 1 touchdown.
I don't know if anyone looked it up, but I wonder if that's the most yards without a touchdown ever.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I'll have to look that up. I know what else. So New England at New York, Kansas City at Denver, Arizona, Seattle, definitely a big one too, because Arizona can really distance themselves a little bit, at least from the Seahawks, in the NFC West with a win, and then the undefeated Bengals hosting the Texans. Good chance, I think, that the Bengals get to 9-0 and continue to cruise in the AFC. And then Minnesota, Oakland for sure. Great matchup to look forward to. Just even just for the quarterback play. Obviously the 2 second-year players, Derek Carr and Teddy Bridgewater. Both teams obviously in playoff contention. So that'll be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, I think probably Oakland may win this game. I just like the matchup in their favor a little bit more. And generally the NFL tends to go that direction. It's more of a matchup-based league. The best team doesn't always win. It's generally just matchup-wise, which talent is going to be used how and such. So, but that should be a fascinating game. I'm hoping it's going to live up to the hype.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts on the upcoming week?
Not many right now. I do know that Pro Bowl voting is out, so...
Yay, fan voting! Hey guys, so this is, I guess, kind of part 2 of tonight's episode of the Gridiron Graduates because of issues with Skype, so thanks, Skype. But we left off talking about the Pro Bowl, how it is open, so kind of go back to what you were saying about the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, so Pro Bowl, I mean, it's funny because it gets used as this argument builder, despite we see like fourth, fifth, sixth alternatives being named to the Pro Bowl.
Yep.
And it's kind of a joke. I think the All Pro designation actually carries some weight. But the Pro Bowl, don't come to my Twitter mention saying, well, he was a Pro Bowler. That doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah, at this point, when it comes to the Pro Bowl, half the league is Pro Bowlers anymore. Between players sitting out because they're in the Super Bowl, or players sitting out because they're injured, or sitting out because they just don't give a damn anymore.
Right.
That's how you end up with players like Alex Smith, who play in the Pro Bowl when they were maybe the 15th best quarterback that season.
Right.
I don't know, and I think as my issues were kind of trying to resolve itself, and then we kind of fully crashed. It sounded like you were talking a bit about Fletcher Cox.
Yeah. For some reason, he just popped in my mind as a guy who I think would be a nice Pro Bowler. Like I don't know. I just feel like if you talk to random fans about football and kind of who are really good players, I'm just a big fan of Fletcher Cox. I think he's a guy that's really developed well in the NFL, and he's kind of the reason why you take good athletes and that flash on tape, and you continue to invest in them and you give them playing time. And he's been a really good player, I think, the last couple of years. And I think he's a guy I'd love to see make the Pro Bowl because I think that his play definitely deserves it.
Yeah. And then, I guess they tried to spice it up a bit with this, fantasy draft. And I know this year you basically have the two winners from the last two seasons, and I think, Michael Irvin and Jerry Rice, I think. So those teams will face each other this year. So, I don't know, it makes it interesting, but I do agree with you that I think players that are named All-Pro is more of an award than being selected to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah. It's just hard to make that game be serious enough. Like, I actually miss what they used to do on ESPN, which were like the skills challenges.
Yes.
That was fun to me. I thought that was really fascinating.
They should bring back the skills challenge, because,
Yeah.
I'll sit there sometimes, like, I'm not die hard about it, but, sometimes I'll watch the NBA skills competition, like, more so the 3-point contest. I have not gotten into the slam dunk contest in years.
No, it's been pretty bad. Yeah.
It's become a joke. And in the NHL, haven't really watched that much, but, I could watch that too. Like, I'll watch, Fastest Skater, things like that. Yeah, it'd be neat to, have, say, a running back gauntlet, or, the moving targets they used to have with quarterbacks, kind of spice it up a little bit, because, like I said, a lot of even the players that get selected and do play, they don't care. It's a paid vacation to Hawaii, basically.
Right.
So, I don't know. Hey, it was fun though to talk about the Pro Bowl in November. I guess eventually I'll fill out a Pro Bowl ballot just for the hell of it. But have you filled out a ballot yet?
No, I'll probably wait till the season's over and I'll do one.
Yeah. Because, in a way, it's kind of pointless to do it now. A lot of things can happen. Who knows, because how long's it been open? A couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Hell, maybe, I'm sure there are some people that voted Joseph Randle into the Pro Bowl. Oops, that's probably not happening now.
Yeah, you always get those really funky results.
Yeah.
As the season goes on, or you'll just get the Homer fans.
Oh,
which, hey, I don't blame them. I don't blame them. They only vote for your team.
Yeah, you come to expect it.
Yeah.
Which would make it more interesting, if it was like baseball, where every team had to be represented by at least one player.
No, yeah, definitely. Maybe that's a good idea for the end of the season for us as well. Maybe we could do a our own version of the Pro Bowl like that.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely have to plan out something. So a little bit of a teaser there. But yeah, so I think that's good spot to wrap it up. Glad we were able to get back on and kind of get a true ending instead of having people listen and it just kind of cuts off at the end. So that'd be a little silly. So now it's just a matter of kind of slicing these two clips together. If not, I'll just have to, figure out something or just do 2 parts or whatever. But yeah, starting to wind down a little bit already. We're entering the second half of the season. I'd like to try to get some people on here and start talking draft soon too.
Yep, absolutely.
Certainly, never too early to talk mock drafts. Definitely have some guys in mind that I'm gonna try to get on, and some that I hope will get on. Hope I can get on, but maybe a bit of a pipe dream. But we'll see what happens. So, any final words, bud?
I don't think so. I know I'm a little bit behind on draft stuff. Even on NFL, started a new job, which is going well, but extremely busy. But yeah, definitely be if you guys are looking for draft stuff, I'm hoping to get some stuff out before too long. And obviously, once I start the draft stuff and my day job slows a little bit, that stuff's going to be coming at you hard and fast. I'm going to try to do some videos in addition to just regular scouting reports as well.
Nice. And yeah, once I get a bit of a break too, I'm going to hopefully, refresh myself on scouting or whatnot and maybe try to get a little bit of film. I can't promise that, I'm going to be as big time as some of these other people, because, I obviously got other stuff going on, and, I'll admit I'm not as knowledgeable as Ian or a lot of people that you see on Twitter. I do this just for fun, and that's, hopefully one of the things that people understand that, I do this for fun. I don't claim to be an expert or anything. I don't claim to know it all.
I'll say if there are people saying that, and that's what gets me too. If you claim to be an expert on football, it means you probably know very little. Football, there's too much to football to ever be an expert on it. It's too random. It is. It's too much for us to really be able to even take in. Man. I think as far as there's a lot going on as far as the mechanics of the game and just the human body, the human mindset. So many things that we don't understand that it makes it a wonderful game.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I just felt like I had to say that. I'm obviously not, some of these top names or top scouts or analysts or whatnot. And there may be times where it sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about. And, if there's some that feel that way, that's fair. It's understandable. It may sound like I'm BSing a lot, but, I do this because I enjoy talking football. I have Ian on because I enjoy talking to him, and I obviously respect his opinion, and, it's pretty clear he's very knowledgeable and probably more so than I am, but hey, it balances out. So, hopefully, like I said, so once I get some downtime, hopefully I'll get a chance to work on this a little bit, and maybe come draft season, pump out a couple scouting reports, and we'll see what happens.
Absolutely.
So, with that, thank you guys so much for listening and bearing with us during the issue earlier. So for Ian Wharton, I am Bill Rossetti. Thanks for listening, and take care, guys, from the Gridiron Graduates.